The numbers tell a story, a grim narrative woven from statistics and reports. A story of decay, not just of infrastructure, but of the very principles meant to guide those sworn to protect and serve. A story of betrayal of the public trust. In South Africa, the police meant to uphold the law, to be the guardians of justice and safety for all citizens, are often its most notorious violators, undermining the very foundations of the legal system they are meant to uphold. The irony is stark, the consequences devastating. Reports from Corruption Watch reveal thousands of complaints, a deluge of accusations flooding the system against the South African Police Service each year, painting a disturbing picture of widespread misconduct and abuse. Bribery, the insidious exchange of trust for personal gain, abuse of power, the wielding of authority as a weapon against the vulnerable, and extortion top the list, a trifecta of corruption that corrodes the very fabric of society. These aren't just statistics, they are not mere numbers on a page. They're moments of fear and injustice experienced by ordinary people, the daily reality for those living under the shadow of a corrupt police force. The rot is systemic, a deep-seated malaise that permeates the entire institution, reaching from street-level officers to the highest ranks, implicating those who should be leading the charge against corruption. Recent headlines expose officers involved in cash-in-transit heists, brazen acts of criminality that shatter public confidence, police stations selling firearms to gangs, fueling violence and instability in already vulnerable communities, and high-ranking officials implicated in fraud, betraying their oath and enriching themselves at the expense of the public good. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate, the body tasked with holding the police accountable, reports a staggering number of criminal cases against police, a testament to the scale of the problem and the challenges of oversight. Murder, the ultimate violation of human rights. Rape, a heinous crime that leaves lasting scars on victims and communities. Torture, a barbaric practice that has no place in a democratic society. Corruption, the silent killer of justice and equality. Each case erodes public trust, weakening the bonds that hold society together, leaving citizens to wonder. Who do you call when the police are the criminals? Where do you turn when those sworn to protect you are the ones you fear the most? This isn't just a political issue, it transcends party lines and ideological divides. It's a threat to the stability and safety of society, undermining the rule of law and creating a climate of fear and impunity. The trust deficit is now a chasm, a gaping wound in the relationship between the police and the communities they serve. Suspicion poisons every interaction, creating an atmosphere of tension and distrust that makes effective policing all but impossible. Making effective policing nearly impossible, hindering investigations and allowing criminals to operate with impunity. International bodies consistently rank the SAPS among the country's most corrupt institutions, a damning indictment of its performance and integrity. The question is no longer whether there's a problem, the evidence is overwhelming and undeniable, but whether we have the will to confront it, to implement meaningful reforms, and to hold those responsible accountable for their actions. The future of South Africa depends on it. Across South Africa, a dangerous narrative is taking hold, a narrative that chips away at the bedrock of community trust and faith in law enforcement. It's a story whispered in hushed tones, seen in wary glances, and felt in the daily lives of ordinary citizens. The police, once envisioned as guardians of peace and order, are increasingly seen less as protectors and more as predators. This perception, whether entirely accurate or not, has profound consequences for the fabric of society. This shift is rooted in daily experience, in the tangible realities of life on the ground. It's the story of a business owner forced to pay protection, a constant drain on their already meager resources, leaving them feeling vulnerable and exploited. It's the frustration of a victim turned away, their pleas for help falling on deaf ears, leaving them feeling abandoned and forgotten by the very system designed to protect them. It's the brazen sight of drug dealers operating with impunity, their activities seemingly unchecked, fueling a sense of lawlessness and despair. When trust breaks down, communities stop reporting crimes, fearing that their actions will be futile or worse, that they will become targets themselves. They live in constant fear of further victimization or extortion, trapped in a cycle of silence and vulnerability. This leads to a dark figure of unreported crime, a hidden world of suffering and injustice that goes unaddressed and unpunished. This allows lawlessness to fester, to spread like a disease, eroding the foundations of a safe and secure society. Without reliable policing, communities turn to vigilantism, desperate measures taken by citizens who feel abandoned by the system. In these desperate situations, mob justice replaces the rule of law, leading to further violence and instability. Effective policing relies on public partnership, on a relationship of mutual trust and cooperation between law enforcement and the communities they serve. But corruption shatters this bond, poisoning the well of trust and undermining the very foundation of effective law enforcement. It blinds officers to what happens on the ground, preventing them from seeing the crimes that are being committed right under their noses. When communities believe police are on the criminal's payroll, that justice is for sale to the highest bidder, the consequences are devastating. Silence becomes self-preservation, a necessary shield against a system that is perceived as hostile and untrustworthy. The result? Policing is reactive, inefficient, and always a step behind, constantly playing catch-up in a losing battle against crime. A corrupt police service breeds fear and hopelessness, creating a climate of despair and undermining the very fabric of society. This is especially true in poorer communities where the lack of resources and opportunities exacerbates the problem. The social contract collapses. The unspoken agreement between the state and its citizens is shattered. Citizens no longer believe the state will protect them, leaving them feeling vulnerable and abandoned. Police corruption doesn't just fail to stop crime, it actively enables it, creating a breeding ground for further lawlessness and violence. Ultimately, it undermines the very foundations of a safe, democratic society, threatening the stability and well-being of the nation as a whole. Behind every statistic is a human face, a life destroyed. Vusumzi Matlala, a community leader in Mamelodi, stood up to the Boko Haram gang. For his courage, he was murdered. Shockingly, his alleged killers included police officers on the gang's payroll. Matlala's murder exposed the sinister alliance between organized crime and law enforcement. Police didn't just turn a blind eye. They provided protection, information, even weapons to criminals. This isn't unique to Mamelodi. Similar stories play out across South Africa, from the Cape Flats to the mining belts. Police involvement transforms gangs into state-sanctioned threats, operating with impunity. For communities, the cost is immeasurable. Businesses close, parents live in fear, activists are silenced. Police corruption is a violent betrayal that destroys lives and leaves a legacy of trauma. Corruption in the SAPS is a multi-headed hydra. At the street level, petty bribery, cold drink money is routine, teaching citizens that justice is for sale. Extortion is rampant. Officers threaten informal traders, taxi operators, and migrants, demanding payment under threat of arrest or harassment. This is a protection racket, not policing. The most dangerous form is police collusion with organized crime, drug trafficking, cash-in-transit heists, illegal mining. Corrupt officers leak intelligence, supply weapons, and sabotage prosecutions. This alliance creates a shadow state where criminals operate with near-total impunity. The rot reaches the highest levels, with senior officials shielding criminal networks for personal gain. Deep-level corruption is the gravest threat to South Africa's security and the rule of law. A culture of impunity fuels SAPS corruption. Officers act outside the law, knowing they'll likely face no consequences. Weak leadership and political interference protect the corrupt, while honest officers are demoralized. Internal disciplinary systems are slow and ineffective. Suspensions drag on, cases are dismissed, and punishments are lenient. The blue code of silence pressures officers not to report misconduct. Whistleblowers are ostracized or targeted. This closes ranks around corrupt individuals, making investigations nearly impossible. Until decisive leadership and robust accountability break this culture, the cycle of corruption will continue. The system must change from the top down. For citizens preyed upon by corrupt police, the path to justice is fraught with obstacles. It's a David versus Goliath battle where the scales are heavily tipped in favor of those who abuse their power. Seeking justice becomes a lonely, dangerous journey, often undertaken in isolation and fear. The very act of seeking redress can expose individuals to further risk. Reporting corruption often means facing immediate hostility, a wall of resistance designed to discourage and intimidate those who dare to speak out. This can escalate to threats, intimidation tactics, or even fabricated charges designed to silence dissent and punish those who seek accountability. All this can happen at the very station where the perpetrator works, creating a climate of fear and impunity. The fear of retaliation silences many victims, trapping them in a cycle of abuse and injustice. This fear often stops them before they even begin the arduous process of seeking justice. Those who persist face a bureaucratic maze, a labyrinth of paperwork, procedures, and endless waiting. Submitting complaints to oversight bodies like IPID, while a necessary step, is often just the beginning of a long and frustrating ordeal. These investigations can drag on for years, with little feedback or transparency, leaving victims in a state of perpetual uncertainty. Evidence mysteriously disappears, crucial documents vanish, and the trail grows cold. Witnesses are intimidated into silence, fearing for their safety and the safety of their families. And accused officers often remain on duty, continuing to wield their power and influence within the system. The emotional toll is immense, a heavy burden of stress, anxiety, and despair. Victims feel powerless against a system that seems designed to protect the very people who have wronged them. They feel betrayed by the institutions that should be protecting them, and abandoned by a society that often turns a blind eye. Many lose faith in the rule of law, questioning the very foundations of justice and equality. This leads to developing deep mistrust of all police, eroding the vital relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve. The struggle for justice becomes a second victimization, compounding the trauma and leaving lasting scars. Ultimately, it often ends in disillusionment, a crushing realization that justice may never be served. In South Africa, being a victim of police corruption is not just a crime. It often means there is no recourse, no avenue for redress, and no hope for accountability. The system leaves victims exposed and vulnerable, stripped of their rights and dignity. Ultimately, justice remains tantalizingly out of reach, a distant promise unfulfilled. IPID, the police watchdog, is tasked with investigating serious crimes by officers, deaths in custody, torture, corruption. In practice, it faces a Sisyphean struggle, underfunded, understaffed, and overwhelmed by thousands of cases. Investigators are stretched thin, leading to massive backlogs and years-long delays. Chronic resource scarcity is a political choice, weakening this vital pillar of accountability. SAPS often obstructs investigations, evidence is lost, officers close ranks, and cooperation is minimal. Political interference further undermines IPID's independence, especially when high-ranking officers are involved. Despite these obstacles, dedicated investigators persist, securing some convictions and exposing misconduct. But IPID cannot win this fight alone. True accountability requires systemic change and public support. Across South Africa, calls for real reform are growing louder. The public demands not empty promises but deep structural changes: transparency, accountability, and community empowerment. Transparency means making police data and disciplinary outcomes public, opening up leadership appointments, and using tools like body cameras. Strengthening oversight is critical. IPID needs more resources, independence, and real investigative power. Local civilian oversight committees can bring accountability closer to affected communities. Genuine reform requires community involvement. Policing must be a partnership, not an occupation. Community policing forums should be empowered and resourced to bridge the gap between police and public. Communities must have a say in setting priorities and evaluating police performance. When citizens are partners, trust and cooperation grow. Only then can we rebuild a police service that truly serves the people. Despite the bleak reality, the SAPS is not beyond redemption. Thousands of honest officers remain, demoralized by the corruption around them. Reform starts with overhauling training, emphasizing ethics, human rights, and professionalism. Recruits must be rigorously vetted, and ongoing development must be mandatory. Political leadership must end cadre deployment and ensure appointments are based on merit and integrity. The power to drive change rests with the people, by supporting oversight, reporting corruption, and demanding accountability. The road is long, but a professional, accountable police service is a future worth fighting for. In that fight lies hope for a safer, more just South Africa.